All right. We are back with round 4, and we have a spicy matchup for you. I'm back with Samuel,
Hi everyone.
and together we're having a look at Gitrog against your fan favorite deck, Terra. A pile that we see in lots of different fashions. While I would say Gitrog is a deck that we don't see that often these days. If we ever see it at all. I mean, um, it was a very popular lands deck for quite some time and a very powerful one. But we know which card is or which commander is the leader of lands decks these days. And if
Yeah, I
we have
think
a look
it's
at the 99, we also see a couple of features in that direction, I would say.
absolutely. I think it's a cool deck to be seeing now, since since the Lumra archetype is pretty cemented as it is, and um, there's only a couple of extra includes that the Gitrog deck lets you get, which are, however, pretty strong. So being able to have a dismember and a fatal push to let you survive a few more turns, and squandered resources is definitely the best and most flexible sack outlet to um, be able to combo within tight spots.
Hmm.
And Heartless Summoning, also another card that's good to have access to in these decks that like to pay quite a bit of colorless mana for their creatures because they're strong creatures. Suddenly,
True, true.
all of them costing a lot less is also very strong. So a couple of strong extra includes. What you're losing is, of course, not having the main combo piece in the command zone. But Gitrog wants to lets you draw quite a lot of cards to get there. So I think interesting choice here. In this game, we see some setup towards that. We have an Amulet of Vigor in play, um, tutoring for something else, a squandered resources with a shred memory. We'll see if that's fast enough against the pretty quick damage clock of a turn 2 Tarmogoyf and a turn 3 Terra, doing 8 damage this turn and presenting lethal the turn after.
Hmm. And it's getting even bigger and bigger by
Yeah,
more cards being added to the graveyard, right?
absolutely. We've
So
already
I
got the
think
main types, creature, land, and instant. I think are probably gonna be the most common types entering the graveyards here. The lighted halfling, bit slow for
not too impressive. Yep.
um, what you'd want to be doing.
But sometimes, I mean, don't underestimate the dorks. Sometimes they can do the final damage that's needed to win a game.
Yeah,
So in a spot like this, unless, I mean, even if Gidrock would have a toxic deluge, he would still have to deluge for 5. And assuming that Terra has another land in hand, which is the case as we see, you can just recast your commander next turn and hope to find a reanimation spell or something that you can return with the effect. So here, a bit of a suboptimal play, which he's forced to do, sacking a couple of lands before Gidrock hits the battlefield,
yeah.
which means you don't get to draw cards off of its ability. But yeah,
I
you're
mean,
kind
there
of
was the
forced to
option
play
of
the blocker.
yeah, there was the option of just playing the Gitrog without playing the squandered resources. Um, but that's very punishing if the Gitrog then gets handled next turn.
Yeah,
In
definitely.
this case, he has the option to draw a couple more cards. I think it would have been valid to just play the Gitrog though, and not play the squandered resources. We'll see how that works out for him.
There's the land drop, and there's another land in hand. And we get to see. Oh, is this a Deadpool?
An uncounterable Deadpool. Yeah,
It's a
okay. Well,
Deadpool. That's
that
crazy.
does look like game because he's at 7. If
Yeah.
he 2 4-power creatures means he has to sack the Gitrog monster this turn, um, which
And, both attacking creatures are not big enough to trade with the frog,
yeah,
which could be an intentional jump block here in order to not lose another 3 HP at the
yeah,
beginning of your
but
upkeep.
he has to.
But, he could actually sacrifice 2 more lands in addition to them. Yeah, but he decides to scoop it up, being down to 3, still having 1 creature on board, and you only have this 1 land with the Utopia Sprawl attached to it. Doesn't um, really sound too promising, to be honest. Here we have a different
Absolutely.
hand. So there are a couple of interesting card choices if you have a look at the Gitrog list. Mm, Back then, I don't know when was the last time we saw Gitrog on the battlefield, but I think it's safe to say 3 or 4 years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I
And
think
back
we've
then,
every now and then we saw it at tournaments still
yeah,
afterwards.
that's for sure.
There was definitely a lot of very dedicated Gitrog players. Um,
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting deck to play. It's very skill intense. It's hard to be bored playing this deck. So I can
yeah, you've got
definitely
some
see
very
why
tight
people,
sequencing decisions,
yeah, yeah.
and
Definitely it offers you a lot as a pilot,
yeah, yeah. And this
Mm,
list, I think it seems very reasonable to me. Um, it's difficult to kind of place how much better Lumra is as a deck, but I
yeah.
would say that this deck does actually compete pretty well from the looks of it. Um, and the same as with Lumra, there's a lot of new includes. So we have Ice Steel Explorer, we have um, 2 new ways as a from since Amulet of Vigor got printed, 2 new ways or 3 new ways with Spelunking, Tiller Engine, and Horizon Explorer to have your lands enter untapped, which makes the comboing with them much easier.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
used to have to um, always have to have Amulet of Vigor or sack all your lands to make mana with the squandered resources, where now that combo is much easier to pull off.
Yeah, I think if maybe it's good enough to just incorporate the Lumra plan into Gidrock. And apart
Yeah,
from that, you have a little bit of support for the game plan, for the overall game plan. We also have the 1 mana black lizard that deals or drains a damage on ETB. I'm not entirely sure on a land ETB, which
yeah,
also has offspring. That's one of those cool cards that you can definitely pack into the 99. Mm, Gidrock as here we have the lizard, by the way. Gidrock as a commander was never a bad thing. You have If you have the right cards together, you get to draw a couple of cards, eventually find a tutor to find either pieces that synergize around Gidrock, or you find your pieces to bring something up with a Lumra line, for example, right? I think that list does not play a mirror pool. It's not that
no.
dedicated, but still,
Well, I think the thought behind that is that the mirror pool really only does something with uh with Lumra.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
other creatures, I mean, maybe with Aftermath Analyst and World Shaper as well, but you've got other ways of doing that, and when you have a Gitrog monster in play and you're drawing cards, you are likely to find more lands and more ways to keep going just by drawing the cards from the Gitrog monster trigger, and you don't
yeah,
need the
exactly.
miracle to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
copy
That
the
that's
Lumra.
that's what I was saying. That Gidrock supports the secondary plans very well too, just by
Yep,
drawing
yep.
a bunch of cards.
Just
That's by the
just
way,
plain Gitrog. It's not fatal pushable. It has 6 toughness. There's I mean, there is enough removal spells in the format that deal with it, but there's still quite a few that don't. You can't pyroglyph it very well. You can't, yeah, most red decks don't have that many ways of dealing with it. Of course, there's Deadpool, which is a catch-all answer to any creature.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
but
think don't you think, like, the way that the format is changing and also the way that Magic is changing, we have more and more threats that cost less mana, and therefore also the pool for interaction adapts, which means the decks are packed with lots of galvanic discharge and fatal push and cut downs and whatsoever. And all these things actually don't do anything against a 6/6 frog, right?
that's true.
Not
That
even a dismember. And I think maybe today's control lists still play go for the throats and stuff like this. But even if I think about Azera, which you would expect to utilize the entire MBC interaction pool, does not feature that
that many
many
removal
go for
spells,
the
yeah.
throats and stuff like this. Also because you have a substantial amount that an amount of cards that you actually need to keep open for the tutors and stuff to get your combo together, right? But even there, I think it's just not that much of a thing anymore these days. And also then effects like Skyclave Apparition, for example, also don't work on Gitrog. I think
Yeah,
they're
I mean, white still has quite a few effects.
that's
Parallax
true.
Wave, Solitude, Swords of Plowshares, Oust, uh,
Static Prison. Yeah,
Static Prison. There's still quite a few cards that deal with Gitrog, and I think there's at least a couple in most colors where red decks have the advantage of it's not like a fatal push where the damage is not gonna do anything, but, it's more like in the, um you're gonna have to use 2 spells to kill the Gitrog if you have a Flame Slash and a
true. Yeah,
and a a Seal of Fire or something like that. Or you send a creature in, it gets blocked, deals 4 damage to it, and then you get to shock it. Something like that still happens.
yeah. I think that's a bit of a risky dismember here to tap yourself completely out in order to deal with Terra because now we have the DT and maybe there is a Fury to roast one of the lizards or maybe even the tiller engine and your own cat, and all of a sudden you have a continuous cat production that
Yeah,
could be
I
a
mean,
line. Oh, you see? Okay.
yeah, there is a Fury. Um, I
Oh,
mean, I think
interesting.
yeah, this
He
is
decides to go for are the lizards 1 toughness? I thought
the
they're 1,
Offspring
2.
creature is 1/1. The guy himself is
Ah,
one
I
too, but the
see.
Offspring
Okay,
creature is 1.
that makes sense. Well,
Yeah,
that
that
was
that
a
makes
really good
sense, but I
exchange.
think
Yeah.
I would've taken the Tiller Engine
Me too.
because the
Me
Tiller
too.
Engine does more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Especially Ajani because Ajani flipped. Um, I I'm not sure if you have to be too scared about um, being behind in terms of damage. Of course, the
yeah.
deck is presenting lots of land drops. Then again, not sure if it's that much of a problem because at some point you're going to produce a cat each turn, of course, and now the frog is down, which means you can't really attack with the cat. It will always blocked by the big froggy wall. Then
Yeah,
again, yeah, I'm a bit. I mean, it's definitely debatable this decision. I would say. Oh, we
I
have a
I think so.
parallax wave.
You have
Okay,
Parallax Wave and a Solitude in hand, so I think
yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, I was thinking, okay, I think getting the, um, getting the what's it called? The Fury is a bit of a difficult, call, I would say,
Hmm.
but because there might have been better something to deal with the Gitrog, but he already had something to deal with the Gitrog in hand, so that kind of
But I'm not
solves
entirely sure
that
if
situation.
if that's if
Okay,
that's
pick
correct. because your opponent is on 5 already, and Gitrog will come back next turn or the turn probably next turn already because he's up on 6 lands, right? And still, I mean, now you will deal with the Tiller engine. I'm not entirely sure if that's the right play because the Parallax Wave, there aren't that many answers against the P Wave, and it will help you to keep Hidrock off of the board for a couple of turns, and any other
Yeah.
creatures too. And I think there's
Yes, so
basically Boseiju and maybe some sneaky things like Tear Asunder, or I'm not even sure. I mean, you can check the list actually
what
and
what
have
what
a
are you
look.
thinking about?
I'm thinking about interaction spells for Parallax Wave.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think it's sure there are things to think about here, but I think Parallax Wave is one of those cards where if the opponent has it, then they have it. If they don't have it, like I think playing around Parallax Wave doesn't really make that much sense most of the time, um, unless you know
Exactly,
about it.
exactly. Which which even lowers the chance, of interacting with it properly.
Yeah,
So you end up casting Gidrock a couple of times and maybe making a land drop, maybe even drawing a card in response to
yeah,
your opponent activating the P wave. But the P wave gives you so much time. So I think, and
yeah.
especially because Solitude, you're not far away from hard casting Solitude. So you probably want to just keep it in hand, play the P wave, attack with your cat, even if it seems a bit too cute. And if you're not too scared about the Tiller engine, then next turn you can think about reanimating the Fury still.
Curious to
Because
see what he
now,
picks up here.
yeah, me too. So it's
Um,
any card since he paid the cleave
any
costs,
card
right?
and he passes the turn.
Yeah.
Um,
With 3 green open. Okay.
it
Interesting.
may be a Boseiju, um,
To deal with the dance? Yeah.
to deal with the dance, but I don't think that's a game-winning line here. Okay,
We
he
see
gets
a
a
squandering
squandered resources,
resources. Yeah.
so he wants to just go off next turn, basically, um, which makes sense. There's no board wipes, as we said, so he could have gotten a Glacial Chasm.
There is a Boseiju still. Okay.
Ah, okay. But I think that was probably already in hand. I don't think that I think I don't didn't see the squandered resources in hand before
Yeah, either of those cards was in
uh,
hand. I
the
would
dig
also
resolved.
assume that he was actually searching for the enchantment instead of Boseiju.
Yeah.
Here is the 5th land for the potential Solitude. So there was a Boseiju for Gidrock actually, which at least we didn't see. It would have been an interaction, or he could have searched for. Now we have 2 cats going in. Milling and Oliphant. Prevailing, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, and the Solitude result was in response to the fetch, so he wouldn't have had the mana to Boseiju,
That's true, yeah.
and the dig happened in response to the
But I
dance,
mean,
yeah.
you could have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, true. So you're already down to 2 mana, and that's. I mean, the line the Terra player chose was actually good,
Yeah,
most efficient. I have 2 mana to untap my Fury, even if it. Oh, actually, it's a 4/3, right? With the dance. No, the 4/4. The dance gives another +1/+1, while
yeah,
animate that reduces the power
by
by
1.
1. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we
So,
have
now
a
he's looking to go
frog.
off.
Yeah,
He
it
has a World
seems.
Shaper in hand, which means that to get he can get pretty far if he simply draws a removal spell.
Are those modified Pokemon cards that look like Magic, at least the front card, or is it the other way around? Is it just a Pokemon
No,
card
they're
that
I think they're just Pokemon energies, I think.
okay. Because the top card, whatever that is it an energy? No, or white, whatever, I have no idea.
I think it's a
This
special
looks
energy. It's a
okay,
colorless energy that's special in some case, I think. Okay,
interesting.
so he has a Summoner's Pact
Oh, yeah.
with a bunch
That
of mana in the pool, so that might get an Aftermath Analyst would be my guess,
yeah.
because he still has to have some way to kill the World Shaper. Yeah, I was correct. If he finds a way to kill the World Shaper, then, um,
You know
he
what's
can
crazy? If
use
it
that as
wasn't for
well.
the Boseiju, he would be dead already. Would be 12 damage actually. Because then Fury would come in for 8. There was no blocker on board. And
And there
then
would have been a red permanent to
exactly another cat and then 4
activate
more
the
damage.
Johnny with. Yeah.
Yeah. 5 actually because of the Tamoglyph. And now he seems to present a loop, which decides, or which
Yeah, he had the
Terra.
shifting woodland in play, so
Ah, yeah,
so
okay,
he
okay.
draws
I
this
see.
he draw
Yep,
in the graveyard, so he draws his deck with the Aftermath Analyst.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty strong.
Definitely.
Oh, we
So,
have an Ice-Steel Explorer with a City of Traitors, and ooh, this is a fast hand.
oh yeah, indeed.
This is a very fast hand with the
We
Heartless
see a
Summoning,
Heartless Summoning. That's cool.
and
And
we're gonna
a
need
Thoughtseize.
ooh,
Oh, giving some
yeah.
information and probably slowing things down. Yeah,
So
I think.
this is a bit depending on what else he has, I think he's probably gonna take the Heartless Summoning because if he needs to find an answer to the Ice Till,
Yeah, I think so too.
and he's more likely to have answers to the Ice Till. But if he doesn't have an answer to the Ice if he has an answer to the Heartless Summoning, he could take the Ice Till, and I think he plays no Prismatic Ending. He could have a Leyline
Oh,
Binding. No, that
he
doesn't work.
drew a Noxious Revival. That's interesting.
Ooh. I
Which
think, yeah,
means,
I think we're probably gonna see that cast next turn.
yeah, I think so too. It will probably bring back the Heartless Summoning.
Yeah. So he's gonna get himself a Swamp in hand.
Hmm. And passing the turn, I guess.
He did drop a card there, right?
No, no, that's the Noxious Revival he just drew.
No, I think a card dropped on the floor
Oh,
as he was shuffling, but
I didn't
okay,
see that.
maybe.
We just looked
Maybe I
like
saw that
that.
incorrect.
So, there we have the Noxious Revival. Not. Oh, okay. Terra is just passing the turn. So,
Which could be an evasive action, is something that he does play. It could be a Tainted Pact,
yeah.
be some form of removal.
So it might have even be better to play it in your turn because, you know, the additional draw could give you a bunch of options to interact with that.
What do you mean the additional draw? He
Um,
wants to draw the Heartless Summoning for turn.
yeah, yeah, I get that, but the timing on the Noxious Revival was a bit off, I think, because you could have just
True.
searched
But
for the
I don't
basic
think
land.
evasive action is a card that he would have been expecting.
Not only this, but it could also be a Cling to Dust, for example, right? There could be a bunch of options that deny that. So you just want to not give your opponent an additional mana as well as another
Well,
draw
no,
to find
he did
something.
it at the end. The Terra player's on the play,
Yeah, exactly.
and he did it in the end step of the Terra player.
Yeah, that's what I
So
meant. But he could have
he's not
also done it in
denying
his
any
turn.
mana. He's not denying any mana because he's not going to be using the mana for anything else if he uses it. I mean, the only thing would have been like Force of Negation or something.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. He was.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I see. I see. I see. He was
yeah.
just. They were just cutting things. He was searching for the second land, but it was not yet in play. Right. He was searching for the basic land with Ashmans. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. The Ash Barrens
I
was
see.
in
I see. I
hand,
see.
and then
So we have a Gitrog here on turn 4. with the help of Heartless Summoning. Terra knows about the Icecell Explorer. There's also how
Ooh,
does oh
Bowmaster.
that's oh yeah, that's interesting.
So we have the Gitrog trigger on the stack and the upkeep
Yeah.
here. He's floating a mana and sacking the swamp to it. Bo Bowmaster is cast, and then he cracks the fetch in order to have the fetch draw not be seen by the Bowmaster while it's still on the stack.
Yeah.
He's got a
Icecell
Surveil,
Explorer
which
is
if it's a land, he gets to draw another card. Um,
I was just about to say Icecell Explorer is a very good card for Gitrog. Really, really good upgrade.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Because
So we draw 1.
remember, whenever a land, there's a graveyard from anywhere, not just the battlefield. That's a really cool Orc Army token.
True.
I like it. Very colorful.
We draw 2.
So we have a bunch of options here, I think. Keep in mind, Icecell
Uh,
Explorer only costs 2 green due to the help of Heartless Summoning.
Yep,
I personally like this card a lot. It always
me
feels
too.
very powerful to have it.
Yeah.
And
It's a card that I'm actually thinking of including in my Terra deck as well.
oh yeah, okay.
Because you always have
Interesting.
lands in the graveyard,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I for the people that are watching other videos, in the recent Tristan video, I had Shifting Woodland plus Ice Till Explorer, which was like a 2 mana engine that I could play, um, a 4 mana engine that I could activate to keep making land drops
Ah,
around all
you want
sorts
to
of counter spells.
okay, you want to include Icecell Explorer in Terra.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's also fair. I was talking about Heartless Summoning actually.
Oh, no, Heartless Summoning, I think, is not good enough with the mana dorks in the
Yeah,
Terra list.
exactly.
I think I would be playing a different Terra
I
list if
mean,
I was playing
you recently
Heartless
tried
Summoning.
the mid-range variant, so I thought maybe you're talking about the
I
mid-range
Marcus
variant with
tried that.
less
I didn't.
dorks. Ah, okay, 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 okay.
I
Never
didn't.
mind. So we have
I'm
the
still
Icecell
pretty convinced
Explorer.
with my pile.
Yeah, fair, fair, fair.
Yeah.
Coming down, lots of things added to the board. He's
3 land
on
drops for turn,
7 lands already. That's crazy. And there is a
and
Talon Gates.
yeah, which will likely try to phase out uh, the Bowmaster in the next upkeep,
Yeah.
and then he gets to kind of go wild for a round. He hasn't got that much synergy with it. Oh no, he does have the wooded foothills in his graveyard, so he can do that. I am not a big fan of how this. Oh, there's an okay, okay, never mind. I was about to say I'm not a big fan of how this Terra deck is playing out right now, but we have a pretty stacked hand here. We have an opposition agent and an endurance in hand, so he
That's
gets to
very good.
cast one of these 2 cards
Mhm.
um, while these things are resolving. And if he walks into any of those effects, so yeah, we see the fetch, and oh,
What
that's a
is
card he
that
might have
card?
liked to have. That is 2 mana, sacrifice a land, gain 3 life.
Okay.
It's
So
called
again, we are
Dark Heart of the Wood.
looking at this game.
Oh, he lets the first fetch resolve.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's interesting indeed. Not sure
Not
if that's
sure what
correct.
his plan is here. Maybe he wants to get resolve some very strong endurance.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, mm,
Maybe, I mean, waiting for the bigger tutor here is okay,
yeah.
but, you know,
I mean, that's a lot of value that we're looking at.
yeah. It's not like shutting down the Wooded Foothills is that crazy. You get to look at your opponent's hand, you deny 1 land drop, they can play a bunch of more from the graveyard due to the Icesteel Explorer. Here we have an Archdruid's Charm, Phyrexian Tower Drone.
Archduke's Charm, which does now with the Yavimaya in play represent a lot of interaction. Like you can kill anything that the Terra player plays if he's not using it to tutor for lands.
Yeah.
And
Did he miss to tap another land here?
no, he tapped Talongates and Yavimaya.
True. Yeah, okay.
So
Oh,
if graveyard order is relevant, I think that was the wrong order. I think the cards from the spell go in the graveyard first that are milled with the
yeah. Sure.
um
That's a beautiful Howard Lion
Rumble.
signature on the Bojuka book. I also like
Ooh,
the one
absolutely.
on Yavimaya.
A bunch of beautiful signatures on
A bunch
this
of beautiful
right
signatures
side of the
along the
play.
line. Yeah.
So
So I'm
something that people that haven't seen Gitrog before um, might be curious about is if he has um, 7 cards in hand, 8 cards in hand at the beginning of the end step, he actually, if he discards a land in his cleanup step and has the trigger from the Gitrog monster, then he gets to draw another card. And if he still has lands in play, he gets to basically filter all his lands he has in hand into spells.
yeah,
And there's no spell priority to happen at the end here. So I think the Terra player played this one a little bit too conservatively.
I think so too.
I think
Uh
the
I mean you can still end of turn. Oh, here we see a cool miscut. In end of
absolutely.
turn, you can still bring down the endurance, I guess. Or, like tempo wise, I think that's definitely a thing you should do. And that's not to do it. Okay, now you play a city. Now you have you actually have both options available.
Now you have both options available, but we have
And
a
also,
dismember and a fatal
yeah,
push in hand on the
that's
right
true.
side of the plate. Also, a possible was us cave activation. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah, I think
Endurance,
I would have attempted to go for it here because it's not getting much better.
yeah,
Um, especially
that's true.
if he's allowed to draw that many cards, then eventually he will find his interaction for the at least for the Orcish Bowmaster, right? So
Mhm. I think it's really
here
cool
we
to
see,
see Gitrog in 2026 again. I'm
yeah.
actually enjoying it a lot. Has been a big part of the metagame for such a long time. So Bowmaster is gone. Gitrog decided to get rid of that, which makes perfectly sense. Here we have an endurance. Now,
This is, I mean, this is an okay endurance, but it's not doing much.
that's true.
Um, there are sure there's a bunch of cards in the graveyard, but I don't think the amount of cards in the graveyard really matters here.
Yeah, I mean, you deny the entire value that the Ice Explorer is granting for
Well, no,
now
he's
until
yeah, for now,
until yeah,
until
yeah,
there's
yeah.
anything happens on the Gitrog player's side. We see a draw from the land that was sacked, and then we're gonna see a draw for turn. Um, we have
That's
now sure this is the world shaper Phyrexian Tower. Draw combo wouldn't have been would have been great, but there was no land sack outlet either, so um
yeah, we have a
we have a
Worldly
worldly tutor,
Tutor,
which
so Summoner's Pack, so that's not too bad. Then
I
again,
think that's
oh,
oh, there's a
Shifting
shifting
Woodland,
woodland.
that's good.
So now he just needs to find a land sack outlet.
Huh? Ah, another miscut. That was the card I was talking about, by the way, as you can see. with the signature on the 20%. The other card.
True. Yeah, that's very cool.
Pretty cool, yeah. So 2 tutors, if I 3 even? No, that's an exploration. Never mind. So we have an exploration, a worldly tutor, a summoner's pact,
I'm not sure if he has
and
another land in hand.
in this situation, because we have the Ice Hill that can play lands from the graveyard, means with the addition of Gitrog's trigger, worldly tutor is as valuable as the summoner's pact because you get to draw the card immediately.
Yep.
That's not a real drawback. And now it's time to fire the opposition agent. But,
So
you
now he's
know, to be
gonna.
honest, you could just fight Gitrog.
Yeah, exactly. He's using a tutor,
And
but he's. But
yeah, that's exactly what is going to happen. And it looks like so the time is not going down anymore. Seems that players are in extra turns. The second. And here we have a cool Lumbra. An artwork that we don't see too often, I think.
I wonder if this Lumra is the.
The gold
This
bordered
is a
one.
4 mana Lumra. I wonder if this is like the correct thing to be tutoring for here. I
I
mean,
mean, he has
there
a
is the
second one, right?
issue.
He has a worldly tutor too. So
Yeah, the issue is he has the Heartless Summoning in play, so he can't get a Sylvan Safekeeper that he can't get a Sylvan Safekeeper that as a sack outlet, even from his graveyard. Um, one. Oh, okay.
oh, an emerald medallion. A beautiful card. Yeah, I'm surprised by a couple of cards that are played here. Something we don't see too often in. Oh, but to be honest, as I said, the last time I saw the Gitrog deck was quite some time ago. So
Yeah, there
I
have been a
don't
lot of cards printed for it that
exactly,
are
exactly,
much better than they used to be.
and
I mean,
maybe depending on the amount of green cards the deck actually plays, it's perfectly fine to play an emerald medallion. It also reduces the cost of your commanders, so but it's definitely a card you didn't see back then.
yeah, yeah. So we see Urza's Cave tapped. Um,
The Rumble is back.
okay,
There
so he
is an
can
Horizon Explorer.
Spring Heart Nantuko onto the Lumra, play a land, pay for the copy, which will get him another Lumra, but not enough mana to keep going.
Yeah.
He draws a card from the Gitrog, and he draws a card from the fetch. So I'm not
I'm
quite
not
sure
entirely
how
sure what
he's.
he's going for.
Well, he has squandered resources, which would just do it here. And
That's correct,
a
yeah.
transmuter for squandered resources wouldn't be enough mana anymore, but it would have been a few turns ago.
Ice Till
Okay,
is
that's a
going to be
prime time.
sacrificed for prime time. Okay. That's one big Alexi signature.
So the
Covering
Glacial Chasm is
half
in
the
the
card.
graveyard. Talon Gates
Facing
phases
out.
out. What?
Okay. And the Bojuka Book. Take care of the opponent's graveyard. Maybe this
Oh,
is a setup turn for the next turn to.
I mean, yeah, it absolutely is. He's run out of things to do here.
Yeah.
He gets to sculpt his hand again by discarding lands. Um, and yeah, I think he gets to attack with a Gitrog for
Yeah, for 5.
6.
No, 5 because of the
It's got a
summoning.
+1/+1 counter from the charm.
Ah, okay. So 6
and
again.
-1 from yeah.
Fair, fair, fair. What about the counter, actually? I'm
Very
still in
interesting
love with the
games.
Bazooka book. I really like it.
I think the primetime signature is also very cool.
Also very cool, that's true.
That's one of the great upsides of being at a bunch of tournaments is that at the big tournaments there's artists as well, and then sometimes and he gets to just pimp his collection out with cool signatures whenever he wants to.
Especially if you're the
Uh,
one inviting the artists, so
yeah.
um, true.
Okay, we see a very rare Terra flip, which is an act of desperation. It's just a 6/6.
Yeah.
There's no enchantment copying happening here. Um, as soon as he finds something, anything to sack his lands with, he's in a very strong position. He's animate deading the Ice Till, playing a land from his graveyard, and he's still looking to draw more cards. So, mm,
I mean,
he could also just attack, right?
you can just attack, and Primeval Titan will search for Golgari Rod Farm to bounce back the Talon Gates, and then you have a
True.
second face out
Then
for
you
the
can
second
have an
blocker, right?
activation for the Talon Gates, and then
Yeah.
yeah. So this
It
game
seems
is
to
this
be
game is
the
over.
easiest line here, I guess, but since your graveyard is full of things, you can come up with even more creative lines, I guess.
So I think he's copied a 6 with the Shifting Woodland. Yeah, but no,
That's
he's
also
just
fair.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
just attacking even with that. He gets the trigger, so he will likely search for the rot farm, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Seems to be the case. Okay, interesting match. Cool to see that
absolutely.
deck again. Both decks, actually. I'm a big fan of Terra, and
Yeah,
yeah,
me too.
I would
Me
say
too.
more of a fan of Terra than Gitrog, but really refreshing to see the deck back in action here.
Yeah,
Okay,
and such a beautiful version of the deck as well.
definitely, definitely. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys, and we will see each other in round 5.
Yeah, see you next time.